Good morning, everyone. Apologize about that. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of AETC. My name is Eujon Anderson, and I am delighted that you are with me virtually for the AETC as I present to you Tech Coach Toolkit, digital tools to support our administrators. Once again, I am delighted that you all have taken the time to join us in the virtual world. We understand that at times right now, we have to do sessions via face-to-face, in person, and then we also still have to do everything virtually. And as a tech director, I definitely understand what it takes to do that. So I truly, truly appreciate you all right now. So what I would like to do to get started before we continue to move on, if you're looking at my screen right now, these resources are for you to take with you and just have discussions with your personnel, with your administrators, with your technology coaches, your district tech directors, or anyone that would like to understand what it means to support our administrators in this digital technology world. And so what you're looking at right now on the presentation, of course, the first link is the presentation itself, bit.ly/AETC Tools 21. And if you would like to connect with me right now, I would love for you all to utilize the slides app below, and then you can ask any questions, and I would try to look over at times to answer whatever questions may be out there. So whatever you're thinking of, or if you would just give me a quick shout out to say hello, that I'm here, then if you don't mind, if you click on the slides.app.gl, and then of course put the backslash and that information in there. So to get started again, like I mentioned, my name is Eujon Anderson. I am the District Technology Director. Here's some information for me related to my website. I love Twitter, and for those of you that have been following us, I have been putting out information on Twitter and also in a weekly curation tool that I am sharing all sorts of information, things that is happening at AETC, just so you all could get the experience as well. I am also a Google certified trainer and innovator. And within this presentation, there are some things that I would like to discuss with you pertaining to my Google Innovator Project passion that I have relating to the help and support we need to give to our administrators. And so that's where we are right now with our goals for today. And so basically, I understand that as tech coaches, and I'm sure for those of you that are on this particular live feed, and for those of you that are going to watch it on demand, you are in some sort of position where you are either a technology coach, you are an instructional technology coach, you are a media specialist, a lead teacher, even an administrator, in some form or fashion, you handle the professional development for your staff. And quite naturally, you possibly handle the professional development for mainly teachers and those members. And so for today, I want to talk about how you could utilize that information and help create professional development, in particular with ed tech tools for our administrators, those principals, the assistant principals, our central office personnel, anyone that has the role of administrators that needs the help when it comes to understanding the digital tools that they are using, or for that matter, the tools that their teachers and their students, and now because of remote learning, what their parents and even community members are using as well. And so we're going to look at what it means to build this toolkit. So before I really get into the actual toolkit, I kind of want to paint this picture of why. Why are we creating this toolkit? And so we all have our pictures. This is my picture for my school system. Once again, me saying that I am the district technology director, I also handles at times the professional development and how we could better utilize the tools that we have in place. And so just to give you a quick snapshot, we have roughly 200 employees. We're around 2,000 students. And so we're bringing in Chromebooks, iPads, interactive panels, all sorts of technology in our classroom. And notice I mentioned this is early 2020. This is before remote learning. And so now that picture looks a little different. And I'm sure that this is the same for you. And I'm speaking to those technology coaches out there, or those district technology personnel that you're trying to figure out. First, I need to bring in this equipment, these digital tools, these devices. I have to work with software vendors and trying to figure out what we need to do to help our students continue to learn. And so there goes the Zoom, the Google Meet, the Microsoft Teams, and everything else you could think of that you are involved in, and you're trying to put this together. You're trying to put plans in place. But what I would like to mention to you, we have to make certain that we include the administrators when we are thinking of this. And so as I continue to paint this picture, and you probably paint your own picture as well, I want you to think about a few things. When your administrators are working with you as the tech coach to come into the schools and work on professional development, my first question to you, and if you could put a question in there if you want to, or just a chat, the first question I have for you to think about is, how involved are your administrators? So that's the first question that I have for the tech specialists that are here, the tech coaches that are here, and the tech directors that are here. How involved are they? Do they stay in the professional development when you are creating it for your teachers? Or at times, do they find themselves busy and they have to walk out? And so the reason why I'm asking those questions, and it's something that I just want you to ponder on, is because that is the focus of where we are right now, especially because of this remote learning. And now we're transitioning to either hybrid or whatever this normalcy is that we're going to come back to, that you have to understand that we have to pull those administrators back in there. So I'll give you a few examples with us and just some ideas that I have when we create this toolkit. But so before we get to that, I just want you to understand, and we know that these are some of the responsibilities that you may have as an ed tech coach. And so we're going to slow down so you can see this. And for those of you that are looking through here, if I may have missed something, of course, I don't mind if you could tweet it to me or send a question out. But here are some of the responsibilities that we have as ed tech coaches, as the instructional coaches, that we have to think about the tools that we have in place. We're focusing on the Chromebooks, the iPads, the laptops, and everything else that we have to give to our students and teachers. Now we're getting into device management, policies, procedures, filters, the professional learning on top of this. But the one thing that I don't want you to forget is keep your administrators involved in this process. Why? Because they are our instructional leaders, and they are also technically supposed to be the education technology leader as well. And so that's what we're trying to do, figure out how can we help this guy right here. So this is my principal, Mr. Krupp. And Mr. Krupp, he has quite a bit that he has to focus on. And here are some of his obstacles, his objectives, his challenges. Financial issues he has to think about. The trust and the relationships with his parents, his teachers, the students, the community. So how can he connect with this? The digital skills or the lack of digital skills that he or she may have. They're always having issues with time. And we know that some administrators have to stay at school between 5 o'clock, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, working on different things. And so we just want to make certain that we are preparing for them. And the last thing I want to mention for my principal right here is they still have to think about professional learning and how it can support the teachers, but not how it can support themselves. So they always put in the other people in the forefront before they think about themselves, which is great. And now we have remote learning that they have to think about. So the question that I ponder to you right now, as you're thinking about all of these digital tools that you could begin to utilize with your teachers, with your staff members and all, from the Google to the Flipgrid and the Seesaw and everything else you have, how can I support my administrators in this same endeavor? And so the first thing I want you to look at is to understand that we have to speak their language. And so as a tech director who works hand in hand with administrators, one thing that I understand, which is on the right side of the screen, is speaking their language involves always communicating and speaking of connecting with parents and teachers and staff members. They always speak of time management. Strategic planning, that goes around a lot. Innovation and engagement, their learning environment. There are so many things that the administrator thinks of, but as the tech coach, what we're trying to figure out is how can we take what we want to discuss with our administrators and intertwine it with their language. So when we are speaking of initiatives and ed tech, digital tools, digital citizenship, creativity and collaboration, when we are thinking of those concepts, SAMR models, and everything else, we have to understand how we could bring it forth to them. And so that's what we're discussing in this session right now. So as I move on, how will you help your leaders with this information that you have so far? How can you help the leaders and continue to empower? How can you help the leaders have a shared vision to inspire people, their teachers, and how they can lead the change, especially post remote learning? And so me being a tech person, I am always a data guy. I love speaking of data. And so what I would like to talk about right now is, as a tech coach, when you are beginning to get involved with your administrators, remember that they have to see data. Data drives administrators. And so before we can have those conversations with them or speak in their language, here's something that you can get started with first. And so just to pause for a second, how many of you create surveys? Surveys that you could create for your teachers to let them know how far along are they with Google Apps for Education? How more inclined are they when it comes to Power Teacher Pro that we're focusing on right now in Power School SIS? And so those are the surveys that you can create. And with that information, you take it back to your administrators to say, let's have this conversation now. And based on this data and this feedback, we can have these discussions of what's needed in the school system for us to get started. So remember, I'm talking about the support side as the tech coach, how you can help deliver that information to your administrators. The diagnostic tool that I have right here, there are all sorts of diagnostic tools out there. ISTE diagnostic tool for leadership is a very good one. However, it is discontinued, but I still like to talk about diagnostic tools that basically explain where we are as a school system. So before you could bring forth to your administrator, we need more Chromebooks, we need iPads and all. You want to show them a diagnostic tool to say, based on these results right here, this is why I think we should go with Chromebooks, or this is why I think we should go with Microsoft 365. So you have to have those surveys and those diagnostic tools put in place for your administrators. And so moving on with the diagnostics, because remember, I'm data driven, and I do believe that before we can get started creating these digital tools and these toolkits, we have to bring the data first. And so now with this, I want to share with you this pretty cool toolkit through COSIN that explains to those administrators some of the needs that we have in technology leadership. And of course, the top 3 needs in leadership right now regarding technology, of course, is the fear of not having enough technology, of course. Digital equity, to make sure that the students have the technology that they need, along with the broadband and Wi-Fi access at home. And then the third is always professional development and having a true professional development plan. And what I like to focus on with my work is I like to show administrators how we can create this personalized professional learning plan that they could look at to, one, learn how to use digital technology, learn how to use the digital tools. Second, become the model for your teachers. You become the model educator. Hence, that's why my passion project is called Game On Admin, for those administrators that need to model for their educators. And so now that we're beginning to look at the why of why should we build this toolkit? Now we can focus on the how. And so what are we trying to collect when we are basing this toolkit for information that we need to send to our administrators? It's going to be quite different from what you send to your teachers. And so here are some ideas of what you could put in your toolkit right now. Resources, all sorts of resources, books and articles for administrators. Just to give you a few out there, district administration is a great place that you could share information with your leaders regarding education technology. Future Ready is a great website that you can share with them to send information to. And there's so many others that are out there. What best practices do you have for helping your administrators be able to connect with the community? Newsletters, podcasts, creating YouTube for your parents, social media, just different things that you can utilize right now. So that's the question that I have that I want to share right here. What resources, what tools, what could you put in place for this digital portfolio of collections for your toolkit? And so now here's some of my examples that I would like to share with you. And later on during this presentation and towards the end of the slides, I will actually share with you some of the examples of how it actually works. But the first thing I would like to share with you is a great resource of using Google Sheets. So once, of course, because I enjoy using Google, I'm going to share with you just different ways of how you can utilize Google tools. And so here's one that I have for you first with Google Sheets. And so this is a created Google Sheet that has at the bottom all sorts of tabs where it has resources for your administrators. They are specifically for the administrators. So from mobile apps that they would like to use. And by the way, I did do a session yesterday based on these particular tools for productivity of the productivity of the instructional leader. The great thing for you, I will have that presentation in this presentation as well for you to take those notes back so you can have that as well. But we talked about mobile apps and how we could use the different mobile apps for our administrators, from the Gmail to the Outlook, calendar, Google Keep, just different tools that they need to understand how they could use on their smartphones, how they could better collaborate, and what digital tools could they use for collaboration, from Padlet to Google Drive to Google Classroom. When they're using Google Meet, those are different tools that our administrators could use to help connect with their teachers and their parents. And then, of course, social media. Creativity and assessments. So there are all sorts of ways that they could use these tools to help. What I'm showing you right now is just how you create the toolkit. Google Drive is another place that I like to utilize for sharing information and storing information for my administrators. And so twofold, what you see right now, I create Google Drive folders that has all sorts of resources just for administrators on best practices, professional development models, calendars, digital portfolios, anything that I would like to share to my administrators so they can have those tools to go back with and learn from. And then, of course, we use Google Shared Drive, so we can have that connection amongst each other. And I even challenge my administrators to also add resources into those same folders. So that's just giving you some ideas of how you can use Google Drive as you create your toolkit. My best by far, of course, is Google Classroom. We understand that teachers love to use Google Classroom for the learning management systems to connect with their students. And now they're beginning to use Google Classroom to connect with their parents so the parents could see what's happening in the classroom. But now I challenge administrators. You can utilize Google Classroom. You can create a professional learning community just for your teachers. And so what you're doing, and I'm going to go back to the tech coach, what you are doing as the tech coach is you're helping the administrator understand how to create this Google Classroom and what resources can they put in there to help their teachers. So you put yourself in the support role as the tech person to help your administrator deliver different types of digital tools that they could share with their teachers. And so once again, we're talking about helping them become that model educator. And so here's some more examples up here where you can see the different types of resources that you can also share. So if you're using Google Classroom as a tech coach to just share professional learning opportunities just for your administrators, then make sure that the resources that you are creating is just specifically for them. So the example that you see up here, the videos that I created for my administrators are based on things that I know they need, how to create and filter their Gmail with labels, how they could best navigate their Gmail. So believe it or not, they still need help understanding how to navigate their Gmail, how they could create those canned messages, and then how they can also organize their calendar. Those are all sorts of ways that I try to connect with my administrators. I create this Google Classroom, and then I give them the tools that they need. And so remember, when I'm doing this, I am thinking like an administrator and how they could utilize the tools. By far, one of my best tools I like to use that is digital online, of course, is Wakelet. If you've been following me this whole week at AETC, I have been pushing the Wakelet Toolkit out there just to see and let everyone out there see the benefits, the awesomeness, the importance of why we can use a curation tool like Wakelet. Better to create, send resources, collect resources from PDFs to digital videos that you could add out there, links and everything else that you could just add in Wakelet, send to your administrators and have this for you. And so I actually created a Wakelet of tools for my administrators and how they can effectively use these particular tools with Wakelet. So now that I shared with you the why, we began to talk about the how. Let's look at what's in this toolkit now. And so when we're discussing productivity, and like I mentioned, we did this presentation on yesterday, and I would love to share those slides with you as well. But we talk about the digital tools as a tech coach or a tech personnel that I'm working and focusing on my administrators. Here are some tools that you could utilize when I'm putting into this toolkit. And remember, the toolkit could be anything that you use and you feel comfortable with in your district. So if it's OneDrive, if it's Google Drive, Wakelet, Padlet, a Google Sheet like I recommended with just hyperlinks. So basically, you're creating a hyperdoc for your administrators. So here are some examples out there. And once again, I'm always going to stick with what I know that my administrators can focus on, something that could help them, from quickly creating within Google with the Quick Drive. So these are all extensions, by the way. The calendar tab. One tab to help those administrators that consistently clicks on tabs and they have so many and they need help with organizing them. They could use an extension like OneTab to help organize and manage those. For those administrators that need help with taking information from their mail and having it as resources to use in the event their central office personnel may need it, you could use Gmail to PDF to convert those Gmail inbox information over to a PDF so they can have it stored. And then, of course, my favorite is that Google Keep. Google Keep is like that switch knife that you can use from. Basically, you could store information. You could use it to create for observations. So they could do observations with their teachers. And what's best with Google Keep is because you still have that shared component, they could utilize Google Keep, do an observation with a teacher and share it with their teachers. It's also a great place to take notes. And so for those of us that are entertaining here at AETC, and for those of you that's virtually, you may want to use Google Keep just to take notes. And then you can take those same notes and share them with other individuals. So to give you another example, I spoke with an administrator here and I told him that basically if he utilized Google Keep and everything that he is learning at AETC, he could create a Google Keep title tab, create the tab for himself, but the notes that he puts in there, he could share it with his staff. He could share it with his administrators. So those are just some ideas that I have for you. And because of the time that we have, I want to continue to move. So I'm not going to go into everything, but those are basically some of the tools that you could utilize to begin for productivity for your administrators to add into your toolkit. So now another question that I have for you, based on what you've seen so far with productivity, let's think about some of the tools that you already currently use in your own environment. And then with that question being said, can you ask this question for yourself, but then also ask it to your administrators? How effectively are they using the devices and the digital tools that they currently have in their own environment? How effectively does the administrator use his or her smartphone? How effectively does the administrator use their iPad, their laptop, their Chromebook, their desktop? Just a question I want you to throw out there. So before I've shared with you those productivity tools, you have to ask yourself those questions so they can understand that they need to be in the forefront when it comes to education technology into their schools. Here are some examples of when we are utilizing these toolkits, how you can help motivate your administrators to understand, here are some tools that you are already currently using, and here are some ways that I could help you learn how to work these tools. So how we could organize our accounts from our emails to calendars. We try to teach them how they could look at sending invites in a professional manner to their teachers. So instead of just sending out a calendar invite, they do more of an appointment, or they ask, when are you available, just to kind of get that feedback. We're talking about feedback here. For the web browser, and of course, I'm speaking of Chrome when I'm speaking of this, do we work with our administrators to make sure that they have their Chrome settings updated? Are they signing into Chrome? Are they utilizing the Chrome extensions and the tools that you recommend for them? And remember, we're not just recommending these apps for them. We are showing them the importance of why they should use them as an administrator. Therefore, you can share it with your teachers. All administrators should understand how they could manage their bookmarks, manage their extensions, how they can clean up their cookies and their histories in their accounts when they're using their Chrome browser or any other browser for that matter. Another idea that we could utilize for our administrators is to show them or how to embrace the video and screen. Now, I will say this before I move on with the video and screen, because I know that because of remote learning, we are somewhat fatigued with this. This presentation was originally done, like you've seen earlier, before remote learning, but there's still a need for administrators to understand the importance of creating through screen capture, screen recording, and video screens. And the reason why I say that, I'm going to paint this picture for you. I believe in something called Flip the Staff Meeting. That's a professional learning unit that I've created for administrators to understand best practices of how they could take their current situation with their traditional staff meetings, which is the normal, we meet at 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the afternoon. We have an hour time of conversation, and then we adjourn. Now, we do share great resources, but how many of your teachers at times kind of quietly said that could have been in the email? And so sometimes there are different ways that we could effectively still do a staff meeting, but we could do it in a different way. So the reason why I'm speaking of these particular screen recording tools, such as Screencastify, Screencast-O-Matic, and the rest of them, is because we could show our administrators that you could utilize the same tools. Now, mind you, when you're looking at this screen, we understand our teachers are already using these tools. They are using them in the classroom. They are connecting and collaborating with their students. And so now you see why it's the importance of why our administrators should use it as well. So going back to that picture that I would like to paint for a staff meeting, we spoke of Google Classroom as a toolkit to use. So now our administrators could use that same tool, Google Classroom. They could use a screen recorder like Screencastify or Loom or Screencast-O-Matic. They can create a video of what they would like to discuss for their particular staff meeting with the agenda, the objectives, and what they would like to discuss. And then they could send that video to the classroom and share that information with their teachers, and that's the staff meeting. So instead of them physically meeting, it's more of a virtual connection. And I know right now we're kind of probably tired of that right now, but there still could be a use of that for that time's sake. So now your teachers have that time where they can go home early. They can get more done in their own classroom as they are ending the day. And so they can receive that video from their administrator, and then you could possibly even have them use a tool like Flipgrid for the feedback. Here's some examples right here of actual administrators that utilizes these screen capture tools. And so what I'm just sharing with you is just how some of my administrators, and of course I help them, but how they were able to use the Screencastify, and of course, what they could do with the professional development that now they are starting to give to their teachers. Because I do believe that that as the tech coach, the instructional technology person, that after you help the administrators, you kind of want them to back you as well. And so once they begin to embrace what you're sharing with them, you will be amazed at what will happen in your school system when your teachers actually see the administrators in the forefront of using the different digital tools in ed tech. I'm not going to share these videos with you to embarrass my administrators, but here are just some examples of how they utilize these tools. A wee video to share with you and how to understand how you can use those tools. Here's some resources that you can utilize. When we spoke of the different books and the literature that you could begin to start those conversations. So if it's not the conversation that you understand how to start with your administrators, you can start here with ASCD. You can start with district administration, Edutopia. Find those particular articles and information that comes from these reputable sources that you could give to your administrators and then start the conversation there. What do you think about this article? Here's some of the key points that I gathered as your tech coach from this article. When can we sit down and have these conversations about how this can help motivate our teachers? So those are the conversations I'm speaking that we should have with our administrators. I had an awesome time doing this podcast, and if you click on the link, it will share with you information on basically how we could better support our teachers and administrators in our role as tech coaches, tech directors, because most of our role is intertwined anyway. And so that's this conversation that I had. We spoke about the obstacles that we have, especially when we are trying to have conversations with our teachers, with our administrators during this podcast. And so I mentioned the mobile apps for our administrators. Here are some of the examples that you can share with them. And remember, these apps that you're looking at, one thing that I recommend that whatever app it is that you are utilizing, it needs to be something that can seamlessly work on all devices for your administrators so they can utilize them. And so if the mobile apps you're looking at right now, these apps can also work on their desktop. Most of them can work on their laptops and iPads. So we mentioned Google Keep already. We mentioned Google Drive. Some of the others are digital tools that your teachers, once again, they understand how to use. But the challenge is, can we get our leaders to utilize these tools as well? Remind to send out information to their community and their parents. Slack as a means of creating groups and connecting with your administrators and your leaders, that you can have projects and just different things like that with Slack. And then, of course, the rest of them, OneDrive, the OneNote, and then your Google Classroom. Here's some tools we're speaking of when we are collaborating with our administrators. And I've already mentioned Wakelet. We talked a little about YouTube. So remember, these are the tools that we want our administrators to begin to effectively use for themselves. And then that way they can share what they know with their teachers, from the Padlet to connecting with Skype, creating different resources through VoiceThread, where they can send out resources to their teachers and then ask for feedback. So there's all sorts of connection tools that I like to say when you collaborate. And so looking at the time, I kind of want to move in. I'm not certain if I can look at any questions or thoughts or any other conversation that you would like to have. So I am, of course, I'm looking at the Q&A that I have on one side, and I think that we can also look at other questions on the app, the AETC app. And so I don't mind addressing any questions that we have for our administrators. So I'm just going to look for a second. Once again, I'm going to share with you the link here. If there are any questions, any comments that you may have of why should we create a toolkit for our administrators? How can we? How can we start those conversations? Or what are some things that you are doing? What are some things that you found that may work? And if you can't ask or talk about those conversations right now, as you are looking at this on demand, or as you are having these discussions, maybe next week or the week after, those are some points that you can get started with your team. So before I close, as we're still looking at any questions or comments, I mentioned to you that I really would like to share with you those particular resources. And so here is the toolkit that I created for administrators. I'm going to see if I can get us to join this toolkit right now. So I mentioned Wakelet as a great place to curate tools. And I'm just going to test. And I mentioned Wakelet as a great place to curate tools and whatnot. And I shared with you how you can use your administrators and give them the different resources. And so when we utilized Wakelet that I created this, I shared with the administrators just different types of resources. And look what you can add in Wakelet for your administrators: Padlets, slides, PDFs, anything that you would like to add for them to see, articles, podcasts, videos. And these are all types of information that I love to share with my administrators. And so I also told you that I wanted to share with you that particular Google Sheet that was created. I just thought that it was a neat way of having a spreadsheet of all sorts of resources. But the reason why I didn't want to show it to you beforehand, of course, is because I think we always have to define the why first. Why are we doing this? Instead of just doing it for the sake of doing it. So remember, when you're finding the why as a tech coach, as a tech personnel, media specialist, anybody who is involved in professional development for your teachers and staff and even administrators, once you define that why, finding the resources becomes a lot easier. And so what you're looking at right now is just that Google Sheet that I mentioned. And like I said, all of you have access to this to copy, share, create it, and have those conversations. But I mentioned to you the different tabs that I have below. And so what I do right here, and I'm thinking as a tech coach, that I have the different designs of different tools that you can share with your administrators to say, hey, this is the grade level based on these particular tools right here for communications on our mobile devices. I share with them the links, and I just give a little description of what the particular app can do. And we just move on down the line from collaboration to assessments, creativity, and everything that they should have access to. So whenever they have the time to just look at, this is a tool for collaboration. Okay, I've heard of this tool, but what can it do? As an administrator, remember, I'm talking about time. I need time. Well, here's a quick description of how this tool works. Here's the purpose and the benefits. So before we make the decision of why our teachers should be using these tools, let us understand those benefits before we present it to them. And then, of course, videos on how you can best use those tools. And so just going to kind of close with a few statements. Thank you for joining me first and foremost, because I know the challenges of joining any type of session virtually, from webinars to just different conferences. And then, of course, you're still either you're at home watching this in the comfort of your home, or you may be at work and then you have to still battle both the work and watching this. And for those of you that's going to take the time to watch it on demand, thank you. Thank you so much. And so as I'm closing out, here are a few questions that I do have for you. So as we are creating this toolkit, we defined our why and how we're going to do this. What tools are you going to add in your toolkit for administrators? How are you going to better support them? Build those connections. So first, you as the tech coach or tech director, build that connection and that trust to that administrator. And then share with the administrator how they can build that same trust of using education technology with their teachers. Will you use a toolkit in your school or district? And so now towards the end, this is the last goal, to turn that grumpy administrator who needs all the help that he or she can get, that we turn them into that great superstar, superhero that we know that they can be. So once again, I thank you all for joining me. If you would like to continue to join the fun at AETC, even though you are virtual, here are some resources that you can see what we're doing relating to what's on social media, images that people are taking and adding to us. So if you want to use the QR code, or if you want to copy and paste that link, I would love for you to join us in this great journey at AETC. Thank you all again for joining us, and we hope to see everyone next year as we have fun again at AETC.